Hello, and thanks for joining our webinar, Flexible Cloud Backup Does Exist, 5 Ways to Activate Your Strategy. My name is Lauren Franco, and I'm a Field Marketing Manager here at OVHcloud. And before we kick things off, just a few housekeeping items. We are recording today's discussion, and we'll share out the recording later this week. We're excited to hear from you, so if you have any questions, please submit those through the chat window. We are going to do a Q&A at the end, but submit them at any time, and if they're appropriate, we can get to them throughout the presentation. So let's take a look at our presenters today. I'm proud to introduce James McKenzie, a solution strategist here at OVHcloud. James began his career as a customer advocate and has years of hands-on experience troubleshooting technical customer issues. He's consulted with hundreds of corporate clients to create and deploy effective cloud solutions. Hi, James. How are you doing today?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? Looking forward to presenting a little bit more on Veeam and what OVH can do today.
Wonderful. And joining us from Veeam, we have Brandon McCoy. Brandon is a cloud system engineer at Veeam Software located in Atlanta, Georgia. He's been in the IT industry for the past 5 years and has previous experience in sales. His current role with his past experience allows him to bring his passion for customer service and cloud knowledge together to help customers find the perfect solution. Hi, Brandon. Thanks for being a part of the webinar today.
Hey, thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So before I turn it over to the experts, let me take a minute and just kind of set the stage. You know, the impact of downtime can be devastating. And if you're attending this webinar, you probably already know that. But when we look at just how severe the damage can be, it's still pretty shocking. 98% of organizations lose over $100,000 per hour of downtime. 93% of businesses who experience a significant loss like this declare bankruptcy within 1 year. You know, it's figures like these that really emphasize why having a reliable backup solution is so critical. And that's why we're so excited to be partnered with Veeam. Today, we'll share with you several different ways that we're helping organizations of all sizes and needs avoid data loss and deploy worry-free automated backups for their virtual machines. So let's jump into it, and I'll hand the reins over to James.
For those of you who aren't too familiar with OVH, I'll give you a little brief overview of who we are, what we do, where we kind of came from before getting started. So the company was literally founded by a family of engineers, which is the Klaba family, who moved from communist Poland to France. To them, freedom means everything, and their philosophy when it comes to technology is innovation can bring you that freedom. So OVH is constantly striving to innovate our products, to offer products that are really open to use. We try to limit any kind of restrictions to any products that we have, which I'll cover a little bit later on. So in 1999, Octave Klaba founded OVH. As the company grew, they realized that the only way a small company can survive is by innovating, and how they do build and deliver technology. He enlisted his family to help him grow the business. So it's really a family, privately held business for the most part. Their continued innovation is reflected in every fiber of who OVH is as a company. So we build everything ourselves from the ground up. They drive every decision that we make, and every kind of interaction that our team does have with customers. So OVH builds everything from the ground up, from our data centers to actual servers themselves. We don't rebuy or resell any prefabricated hardware. We actually do everything pretty customized, use water cooling, for example, which is all stuff that I'll cover during this presentation. But the goal is to bring all of this innovation and excitement to the US market and to you. So the US has been a project that's been under development. For those of you that are familiar with OVH from the past, we do have data centers worldwide. We actually have 27 data centers across 4 continents today. And there's more that are constantly being built. So we've been striving to build I think we did about 12 data centers in the last couple of years. And that's to reach our 1.3 million customers in about 138 countries today. We have over 300,000 physical servers that are running today. So those are not virtual servers. Those are physical machines that are running on the internet today, with about 200,000 private clouds or VMs running in our private cloud solutions, with about 605,000 public cloud instances that are created each month, so that are disposed of each month or recreated. Today, we actually have a capacity of 15 terabits per second on our network, so it's a crazy high bandwidth capacity. OVH's network is something that we invest in probably the most, along with our anti-DDoS solution to protect you against any kind of malicious traffic that might end up hitting your servers, which is included with all of our servers. Another cool thing that we have on that network is that we hardly ever charge for ingress and egress with the exemption of one of our public cloud offerings. But other than that, you're completely free to use our network as you want, which I'll go into a little further as this presentation goes on. And we're very well connected with about 33 points of presence globally today. Our weather maps are also accessible online if you want to Google OVH interactive map, where you can see exactly who we peer with, where we peer with them, and even how big our fiber optic links are between each and every point of presence that we have. And today we're just a little over 2,500 employees globally. So we are excited to announce our 2 openings of our data centers in the US very recently. Our first data center on US soil is bringing us innovation to the US market, which was developed and built in Vint Hill, which is the area where I'm located today. And we also have our other one on the West Coast, which everyone can use as well, which is near Portland, Oregon, in Hillsboro. So we want to help you guys meet your needs and use any kind of one of our products to help you get there, which I'll go over a little bit now. So at OVHcloud, we have products that support hybrid and pretty much any kind of infrastructure that you'd want to start building, ranging from our hosted private cloud solution, which is based off of VMware. And this is a true software-defined data center where we give you the tools that you need and manage all the hardware up until the hypervisor level. Under that, it's up to the customer to build any kind of virtual machines that they want to do and set up any kind of rules they want. We would give full access to the Enterprise Plus license of VMware, which the customer can then manage and set any kind of rules, which again, I'm going to go into more detail in a little bit about what that looks like logically. Our public cloud, which I'm going to touch on a little bit less today, which is an OpenStack-based compute storage and platform as a service where you can launch projects such as development workloads, temporary workloads, anything that you want to keep that's a little more serious would work as well. So anyway, we give the exact full OpenStack offering with full API access through either Horizon from OpenStack, or you can use our own APIs, or you could use the OVH Manager to work on that. So that's one offering that I won't be emphasizing too much on today, but we do have a great public cloud offering that's available and built amazingly as well. So you can see a little bit more about that on our website. And then last but not least, our dedicated bare metal servers for those customers that want to have something that's extremely efficient and very inexpensive in terms of cost, as well as high performance using some of the latest and greatest parts based on our partnerships with hardware vendors. So as I mentioned earlier, we do build our own servers. I'm going to go more into detail about that later. And we rack these ourselves. We use water cooling and all that stuff, which we'll cover in a bit. And then just to touch on our network one more time, we do have 15 plus terabits per second of our own fiber optic network that belongs to us. We include our anti-DDoS system with that, and we also include another product called vRack, which is available for all of our products as well. And what vRack does is it allows you to create a layer 2 network across your entire OVH infrastructure over different countries and multiple data centers and multiple products. So really giving you the ability to create your own hybrid infrastructure and really have full control of your entire infrastructure. And then just to top that off, we do have 24/7 customer support worldwide and our professional services teams that can really help you do anything you want to do. If you're running into any kind of issues, they'll be able to point you in the right direction. And if you're experiencing issues, they're always there to answer the phones. So without further ado, I'll continue the presentation. We're going to talk about tiering your applications. So some applications might be non-critical applications that can experience downtime without drastically affecting your business. So this might be something that you don't need to have in a full DR scenario, but you do want to have a backup that you can spin up rather quickly. So this is something that can be touched by multiple of our Veeam offerings. The RTO target of 4 to 24 hours, so up to a 24-hour RPO. So again, this is more on the VM side. Let's say you have a very heavy VM that you want to back up and then spin that back up into another infrastructure. This is a solution that would fit under that kind of window. Consider low-cost or zero-cost replication tools that may not feature orchestration and automation. In this case, we're going to go into low-cost tools, so such as our standard and advanced Veeam offering, which I'll cover in a little bit. But for very minimal cost and very low management, you can have these backups and restore from those backups over a very rapid period of time and very easily with just a few clicks. And then we also offer other ranges of things. So you can restore from a cloud-hosted backup of production data to a hosted private cloud, for example, or to dedicated servers, which we'll show a little later in some of the use cases. Now, before I get into the exact use case, I did want to cover our hosted private cloud and what's actually available in that offering. So in our SDDC pack, software-defined data center stack, you would receive one pack that includes 2 hosts, so which are completely redundant of each other and work together. I'll show that in the logical topology in a second. And attached to 2 data stores where your VM storage is going to live. Those are also fully redundant, and we offer very high SLAs on those. Now, this offering includes vCenter. It also includes VMware's NSX, and we do have tons of possible add-ons for these. So obviously, today I'm going to be focusing on Veeam, but you could add VROps from VMware as well, hybrid cloud extension, and you can also add a ton of IP addresses to there that are usable on the internet and create private networks and whatever else you want to do. So tons of add-ons available. This is a fully redundant offering, and I'll explain a little bit more about how that works. Once our public cloud's deployed, we do have a fully automated backend, so there's very little human interaction in these. We rack all this stuff and make sure that it's working properly. And on top of those 2 physical machines, you're going to have the vCenter, vSphere, and NSX layer. And above that is where the customer is going to control the actual virtual machines. You can have basic full access to vCenter and kind of build up that infrastructure however you'd like across the world in any one of our data centers for the most part. So what was I going to say? Going downwards, though, you do have the 2 physical hosts that are there, which are interconnected with 2 storage hosts. With the Enterprise Plus license, you have access to features like high availability, for example. So let's say one of these machines here on the left goes down. All of your VMs on that machine are going to automatically reboot and go over to the next host as long as you have high availability enabled, which is enabled by default. You have vMotion, so you can do that yourself manually and move those VMs across each host if you wanted to, which is very similar to storage vMotion. So those VMs are always going to stay attached to this same storage, but if this host goes down, it's going to be moved to that exact host that's still alive, and your VMs are going to still live on that same storage. And that's going to be while this is replaced automatically within just a few minutes. You also have access to DRS. So what DRS will do is schedule your resources to be kind of balanced across those loads. So think about it as a physical load balancer. From there, the virtual machines, once you add them to your cluster, they'll choose where to go based off of how much space is available in that cluster. You have access to fault tolerance. So this is the version 6.5 of VMware that's available. And you have all the same rules and guidelines that would be initiated by VMware in that case. So if you need to have a VM that has 4 cores, for example, and I believe it's up to 2 terabytes of storage, and put that into fault tolerance, that is totally available to you. And this is a fully redundant solution, meaning that the storage arrays are fully duplicated. They're in the sense where if a disk breaks, it's hot swappable. They're completely replicated to the point where we offer one of the highest SLAs that I've ever seen, which all of the SLAs are available on our website. So if you want to check those out. The networking is also duplicated with active and passive links. So if one link goes down for any reason, a second one will pop up. And then finally, the hosts as well. If a host goes down, we do have other hosts that are always on standby waiting to be assigned to the customer in case of any sort of major incident. So that being said, I can explain a little bit more about how this works with Veeam, which is one of our add-ons for the HPC product, so our Veeam standard and advanced offerings. And I'm going to be demonstrating these by going through some use cases. So in the first customer use case, this would be a customer that wanted to use our standard Veeam offering. So this just takes a couple clicks to enable, as I mentioned earlier. I believe we do have some videos of that on our YouTube channel. But this would be a small, medium business customer. They need to have a 10 gigabit fiber link between their actual servers and the Veeam backup replication server, which I'll show in the reference architecture in a second. They want to send backups of their old on-prem infrastructure. Sorry, that shouldn't be written there, actually. This would be a customer that has built up their own HPC virtual machines, so such as the ones that are listed here above, and they just want to back those up in the same local data center because one of their customers, for example, might need those backups. The must-haves would be that the customer has a limited budget. They have a low retention requirement because their customer only needs a 7-day backup, for example. They don't need an extended retention period of a very long time. They can just take it from up to 7 days. They wanted to have a couple backup sites. So in this case, they would be able to back up to their on-premise site and also back up to OVH without actually having to touch anything. And the challenge here would be having no staff to manage their actual backup solution. This is where OVH comes in the sense where backups are sent directly to us without any customer intervention whatsoever. They just click a button and it's done automatically at the same time each night. And on this solution, this would be OVH's hosted private cloud plus our standard Veeam solution. And I'll let Brandon take over a little bit here.
Yeah, thanks, James. So the Veeam solution works here with OVHcloud, and with the standard offering, you still get a full breadth of protection, doing snapshot-based backups, full images, and then incrementals thereof. The storage is managed by OVH, and again, all the protection, all the kind of machines you have, all your critical applications, whether it's Exchange, Active Directory, all those are backed up and sent to the OVHcloud. So it's a very integrated product with Veeam, and even the standard offering is pretty good. We're not an a la carte shop, so it's not like you have to pay more to get all these extra add-ons. There's just a few different sizes that Veeam comes in. So.
Yeah, exactly. If you'd like, I'm just going to add one part onto that, just how Veeam's OVH's Veeam server backups actually work. So once you do make that click, let's say you wanted to choose this VM here to be backed up. That's going to be done completely on our side once you click the button, and from there, this VM is going to travel across our Veeam server on our management VLAN through our Veeam server and into one of our admin repositories. And those repositories are composed of large ZFS pools with large disks that are in the back end. Each pool is pretty large, and those are fully replicated as well. So you can think of the full redundancy that we put on these hosts or on these storage arrays that I mentioned earlier. We put the exact same type of redundancy on here as well. So you never have to worry about any data loss or anything like that. It's fully replicated. The only thing is that it does reside in the same data center. You're limited to a 7-day retention period on the standard Veeam. And it does take a full snapshot, so this isn't a file level restore solution. This is something that is a full snapshot that you can restore from, hosted in the same data center. That works great. It requires absolutely no management. It's just a couple clicks. Yeah, Brandon, if you have nothing else to add on there, I'll move on to the next use case.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. So the second use case is going to be another SMB. This is going to be for our advanced version of Veeam. So it's very similar to the first version. This customer is an SMB. They also wanted to have that 10 gigabit link, sending backups to their old on-prem infrastructure and OVH. Their must-haves is that, again, they have a low budget, so they would like to have a fixed cost on this. They don't have that staff to manage the backups. The backups have to be done at a specific time in this case, and they have stricter requirements from their customer requiring a 14-day retention as opposed to having that 7-day in the first one. And let's say those backups have to be done at a very specific time, being 1 a.m. Eastern time. In this case, their solution would be the hosted private cloud from OVH as well as the advanced Veeam. And I'll let Brennan go ahead here again.
Yep, and with the with the advanced Veeam, obviously the retention period. So that's something that's real important. I get a lot of customers who ask recommendations on how long data should be kept, and sometimes data needs to be kept longer. It's really up to you at the end of the day. So having a longer retention period for those more critical VMs, where just in case, we see a lot of times where maybe a virus or some sort of corruption isn't initiated right away when that file is downloaded, and it happens later on down the road. So having this longer retention period. Also, you get some greater flexibility from a restore perspective with some of the higher end versions of Veeam, right? So a more granular restore of application items, and we also have a lot of compression and deduplication. So if you're being you're worried about how long or how much data is being sent across With Veeam, we have, compression deduplication within the job itself. So we're going to deduplicate, all the OSs within those jobs, and then any redundant data inside the VM. And also, we don't back up any empty space. So we're only going to back up the actual usable data of that VMDK or that VHDX file.
Perfect. All right, so that being said, I'm going to move on to just explain one of our other server products. So I'm going to go over our dedicated servers in more detail because that's going to come up more in our enterprise use case. So the first two versions that I just went over, they're very simple. They're one-click add-ons. Everything's managed by OVH from the actual backup process itself to the storage where that's held on. Again, they're offered in 100 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabyte arrays. That you can choose from based on the size of your VMs. The further one is really just reselling a license, which I'll talk about more in detail with Brandon after covering our dedicated server line. So OVH's bare metal servers or dedicated servers come in a few flavors from infrastructure, high availability, storage, GPU, and game range. The customers that would typically use our Veeam product on here would either be in the infrastructure range, high availability, or storage. So I'll talk more about those than the other ones, but just to talk about them quickly, we do have GPU servers that are available for configurations built for basically machine learning projects, scientific computing, or any kind of 3D rendering projects you might have. And our gaming servers would be very high frequency servers that would hold like a really good processor along with some intense drives, so such as like NVMe drives or maybe just pure SSD that are perfect for hosting games as well as basically reselling or hosting game servers would be the best target there. So anyway, I'll go over our three that really correspond to Veeam. So infrastructure servers would be one of the top ones to use, especially if you're starting out or if you're a company that does not require that intensive of computing but still wants to build a pretty decent sized infrastructure. They work along with our vRack to interconnect each other, which I'll talk about a bit later. You can have pretty high performance there and use them as either a backup target or to put your own license for, let's say, VMware on top of there if you have your own enterprise license, or if you have some other kind of private cloud solution or some other hypervisor you want to install. So you could put that on top of there. And then going one step up would be high availability, where we do have some more redundant components. You do have full customization availability as well. So if you want to add specific hardware into there, we do have quite a large range of options that you can choose to kind of make those servers more tailored to what you want to do. Let's say you have something that's very high performance and you need to absolutely have like 36 disks in there that are all very high powered SSDs, but you don't need as much RAM to go with that. Any kind of customization you can think of for your workloads. You can usually build that out with high availability servers, and again, attach that with our vRack. And then last but not least would be our storage, which is high storage capacity for relatively low cost as well, which you can be the judge of if you want to check our pricing on our website and all that stuff. But basically, we do have servers that can go up to 36 disks that you can target for your Veeam backups. So the first two options would be great for replication purposes. The storage would be great for a target backup. And one more thing that I wanted to mention on our dedicated servers is that with these, you really do have full control. You're fully in the driver's seat. You have complete root access to there. You can even access the BIOS. One thing that differentiates us is that we do use full water cooling on all of our servers. So it does save us energy and costs, which we can kind of pass on to our customers. You can manage your own network using our vRack, and I'm going to cover that in a later slide. But basically, it is a layer 2 extended network that you can deploy across all of our data centers in your OVH products to make them communicate at a layer 2 level in a private network. We don't have any ingress or egress charges on these products, so we absolutely do not charge for bandwidth, which is great for you. You can also bring your own license. So let's say you have your own Windows licensing, SQL, any kind of hypervisor you can think of, you can actually bring that into OVH. We have no problem with that whatsoever. And then I'm going to move on to the next use case, which would be using these. So in this case, we have a customer that would be a law firm, so a rather large customer that does have about 300 VMs that they want to back up, and they need to have a 3 gigabit per second connection between their site and the backup site. Their must-have is a 7-year retention policy, as many law firms have a large retention policy for their backups. They wanted to have file level restoration capability if they ever need to, which is very important in that industry. And the challenges is that they really wanted to have full control of their infrastructure. So really using an IaaS model where they have complete control of everything, including the backup solutions that they're using and their own backup licensing or their own storage server licensing, for example. And then having maybe a dedicated connection to the data center, which we can offer with vRack. I'm going to show that one in the later slide, though. And then in this case, the solution that we would go with is our enterprise Veeam along with hosted private cloud. So just to, I'll let Brandon drive for this one.
Yeah, so the Enterprise Plus version of Veeam offers a full breadth of things. So for instance, if you're using some of the SANs in your production environment that we integrate with, we can do backup from storage snapshots. We also have the ability to control backup I/O latency. So for instance, you have production data stores and you schedule a backup job. Veeam starts hitting those really hard. You're noticing a lag in production. You can actually set those latency controls, and with Enterprise Plus you can actually do that on a per data store basis. So again, and just having full control of the Veeam features, like it says here, scheduling your own time to do the backups, having the kind of backup schema you want, right? Whether it's full and incrementals, whether you want the synthetic fulls, and then up to that 7-year retention policy, being able to utilize Veeam's GFS retention as well as synthetic operations, and being able to keep that data for a long amount of time, and being sure that you can always restore that data because of the way we do our backups, right? Where we're not just having one long backup chain, we're splitting those into series so that all your backups are less vulnerable to corruption. So.
Great. And yeah, and just to emphasize that point, this would be a hybrid solution on OVH's part. So you would have access to having our HPC, for example, and then targeting like having our HPC environment, so hosted private cloud environment in Vint Hill, which is on the East Coast, and actually targeting our data center on the West Coast for that directly into our dedicated server lineup, which would be a cluster of storage arrays. So that's just to explain that a little bit deeper. Next, I'll go over our fourth use case in this presentation, which is going to be a global logistics company or one of our customers that has about 1,800 VMs. They also have that need for the 3 gigabit per second connection. And I'm going to explain that dedicated connection here as well using our vRack products. So some of the must-haves would be that the customer has multiple data centers and they are kind of operating independently today. And they want to be able to link that together, but the actual customer data must reside within their own countries. So each country is going to need to keep their data there, and they're going to have to replicate that infrastructure because they're tired of managing this sort of infrastructure. This is the use case from this customer. The challenges would be a full migration to a hosting provider. So they wanted an easy way originally to actually migrate all their data over to OVH without having to worry too much about the time that it would take and all that kind of stuff, and full private networking across 4 countries. The solution that we're going with today would be co-location facilities that they were operating in, and then using Veeam Replication, which is available through the Enterprise Plus license from Veeam. But first, I'm going to explain a little bit about vRack and how that works, especially vRack Connect, which I'll get into over the next couple of slides. I can do a little refresher on what we were talking about originally, just in case. But what vRack allows you to do is, let's say you have all of those VMs, or you have multiple workloads that you want to keep in the same private network. You can think about VLANs in HPC by itself. You can have those all connected together that way. But we also have vRack, which allows you to create up to 4,096 VLANs, where you can manage any kind of OVH workloads that you have. So for example, let's say you have a ton of public cloud instances that you want to network together. You can put that in your vRack B. If you want to have your HPC environment with your dedicated servers, you can actually put those in the same one as well, or segregate those workloads as you wanted to as well. So you would have VLANs 1 through 495 in there available for you to use. And same thing in D, you'd have all those VLANs to use. So imagine that you wanted to launch multiple dedicated servers. You can have those all in the same data center communicating privately, apart from your HPC environments that are also communicating privately, and apart from everything else. Or if you wanted to, you could add those together. So vRack C in this case would include both your HPC and create a hybrid one data center, dedicated server, HPC hybrid environment. So you can put those all together. And then last but not least would be connecting all of them together. So imagine you have HPC in Roubaix, PCI sitting in Hillsboro, and then your other data centers available in Bent Hill. This is true for all of OVH data centers worldwide today. So you can replace these with any of the countries where we're hosted in. You can mix and match all of our products together across vRack in different countries worldwide. And then they're communicating with that private network that you assign to them yourself. And it's all done directly through a GUI interface that we have or through the OVH API. It's extremely user-friendly. It works pretty much instantaneously. And again, we have a few demos of this available on YouTube on our channel if you want to check that out. So vRack Connect is another product that allows OVH customers to connect directly to that vRack. So imagine you have the example I showed here where you have all these infrastructures worldwide, but you want to connect directly to OVH with a fiber yourself. You can connect to OVH with either a 1 or 10 gigabit fiber. And this will allow you to have higher traffic throughput. You can extend a layer 2 network from your on-premise site or your co-location facility to OVH through one of our points of presence where we'll do a cross-connect. You can do secure connectivity from your on-premise to cloud. So technically now you're not passing over the public internet, making it very secure to move those backups towards us without having to worry about any kind of issues with, I don't know, people eavesdropping or anything like that on your network. And you can connect as well to other cloud providers, which I'm not going to go over too much today. I'm really going to focus more on the Veeam offering. So this is how that would look in a logical topology. In this case, let's say your customer or you're a customer that's sitting in DC and you want to connect directly to one of our POPs. You would just extend that fiber to our point of presence. We would do the cross connect there, and you would now be directly into your vRack, which can stretch worldwide. So you now have a private network extending worldwide directly from that one office, and all you have to do is a cross connect in one of our points of presence. And you can send backups that way privately. You connect to all your backend stuff privately that way. So that being said, I'm going to go back to the example that I had there, which is a global logistics company. Just a quick refresher, they had data in multiple countries that they had to replicate into the same countries that we happen to have data centers in, which is one of the reasons why they chose OVH. They still want to have that back-end private network between the facilities, but their customer data can't move. So Brandon, I'll let you talk a little bit about the replication part and all that.
Yeah, so replication from a Veeam perspective is, more than just the backup. It's actually taking a full copy of a VMDK or VHD, VHDX, and placing that on that other host, on that dedicated hardware, and just taking the incremental changes as they come. So, it does cost a little more overhead, but those are for your mission-critical machines. When you're thinking of recovery time objectives, having a backup that has to be rehydrated and re-registered to a host can take some time. And if you just don't have that time available, Veeam replication takes the whole image and puts it on another host. Those changes can be, synced back seamlessly. So when your data center goes down or some machines go out, you can seamlessly switch over to the replicated VMs and run off those. When you're done with those, you can save those changes back into your production environment.
Great. And yeah, again, just to emphasize on the kind of infrastructure we're dealing with here, this would be a customer which has multiple co-location facilities, and just doing that Veeam replication over to data centers that are within OVH, so Bent Hill, Montreal, Paris, and Limburg. And those are connected in the back end on our vRack, and those are all dedicated server infrastructures to actually take care of or to handle the replication on the receiving end. And then last but not least, our customer use case number 5, which would be a banking customer. So this again was one of our challenges to move very many VMs over to OVH, and in this exact case, they wanted to not go over any public internet, so they wanted to stay completely off the internet to maintain that data. It was one of their requirements. Their backups needed to be replicated and only accessible over the fiber optic connections. So in this case, they did have one replication facility where they did replicate certain VMs, and then a bunch of them just had to be backed up as well to a different location. So they were able to choose one storage target and one target to replicate, which both had to be within the US. I'm not mistaken. So the solution would be OVH Enterprise Veeam plus our HPC targets in Bent Hill and in Hillsboro. In Hillsborough, they went with dedicated storage targets. So in this case, the customer is going to back up those VMs directly to there. And in Vint Hill, they're going to be doing the replication part. So taking dedicated servers, going over our vRack Connect, so going directly into one of our OVH points of presence over a 10 gig fiber optic link, and then backing that up or replicating towards Vint Hill. Anyway, Brandon, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And really the only thing I'd have to say here is the difference in OVH from some of our other cloud providers. You know, we do have an option called Cloud Connect where we're doing some additional steps, but this is a much different approach, and this allows, like you said, to when you know, information can't go over the public internet, having their own layer 2 connection. So that's usually something that a provider would leverage Veeam for, to use our services to deploy those kinds of things, and this is OVH's own remedy to that solution. So it's a very interesting play, but it still works great with Veeam.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, we do have the Veeam Connect and other Veeam products available in OVH Group, which is something that we might be looking into in the future for OVH US offerings. But for now, these are the main features that we do have. So that being said, we would definitely like to go into the Q&A session. I believe I'll let Lauren take it over just from here.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, James. Why don't you just advance to the next slide?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So great discussion, James and Brandon. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. There is still time to submit questions, so if you have anything, please do that now. This question is actually kind of a two-parter, so let me read it, and James, you can take the first stab at answering, and then Brandon, jump in with your 2 cents. This person asks, I only saw relatively small storage targets for backups, so I'd like to understand capabilities to back up SQL servers with existing 3 terabits databases and growing. Also interested in how Veeam handles SQL log backups when SQL database is configured for full recovery.
I can definitely take the first part of that question, which would be for OVH, for our standard and advanced Veeam, we do have a limitation currently at 2 terabytes per virtual machine that you back up. So that's with our easy solution. It's really just backing up 1 VM at a time towards our own storage that we manage and all that kind of stuff. Now, once you get out of those 2 levels, we do resell the Veeam Enterprise Plus license. So you'd be able to actually install that in your own environment and do your own backups as you'd please to do them. So we follow any kind of best practice guidance that we're given from Veeam as well as from VMware. But other than that, you're absolutely free to do whatever you want. For the most part, one of our customers would take, let's say, their own private cloud environment, or I'm not sure where your machine's actually sitting in this case, and then back that up towards one of our storage server targets, either over our vRack solution, which is completely private, or just using Veeam to target that solution. So that's one option that's taken relatively, the majority of the time, I'd say. I hope that answers the first part.
Yeah, and just to come in from there, so from a purely Veeam perspective, you know, the way we handle that is we have a guest interaction proxy. So, you know, something that differentiates us from a lot is we don't use agents even when we're doing those application-based backups. So SQL will do a temporary pause on the database so that we can, you know, process the logs, flush the cache out, and ensure that you get the most transactionally consistent backup. And we do the log truncation by default. And we still allow for, you know, that granular restore of a SQL database even when we're truncating those logs. And if you have the full range of you know, Veeam features where you can completely control it, you can also ship your logs out. So we can do log shipping up to every 5 minutes.
Okay, wonderful. We have another question here. Brandon, it looks like this one's for you. What kind of encryption does Veeam use for backups to the cloud?
Yeah, great question. So by default, Veeam uses AES 256 encryption for all of our backups, and that's before the that's on the source side before, and then if you know OVH or wherever you're sending your backups to, you can opt for at rest encryption as well, which is also AES 256.
Okay, great. James, it looks like this one might be for you. What bandwidth ingress egress charge within OVH's network?
That's One of my favorite parts about our network actually is we actually do not charge for ingress and egress on the majority of our products, with the exception of our backup solutions for public cloud. But other than that, you're completely free to upload, download, and transfer data across our fiber optic lines with absolutely no cost whatsoever to the customer. So you can save a ton of bandwidth charges that way with OVH.
Sure, definitely a nice feature. Okay, here's another one for Brandon. What is the main difference or benefit for backups versus replication?
Yeah, another great question. We touched on it briefly, but just to go over that again, because it is a question we get asked a lot. You know, when some customers will do like a local backup and then they'll do a backup copy job, which is, you know, some people refer to that as replication. But again, in Veeam terminology, replication is having a full VM file placed on another host, right? So we're not having a flat file that's just stored on a disk where we have to rehydrate that data, register it to a host. You know, that can take hours sometimes. This is the ability to take a whole VMDK file or a whole VHD file and put it on another host that you can seamlessly fail over to and save those changes back quickly.
Okay, wonderful. It actually looks like those are our questions for today. If you get off this webinar and you have other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're happy to follow up with you. James, if you can just take us to the last slide there. We just want to thank everyone for joining. Hopefully, regardless of where you are in your cloud strategy, you've heard some options today that will help you feel confident securing your backups with OVHcloud and Veeam. A special thank you to our presenters, James and Brandon. Great job today, guys. And a final note, for latest news, product information, and promotions, please visit both of us online. Thanks again, and have a great afternoon.